Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Surveying Room. I'm your host, Nina Young, and today I'm joined by Layla Davey, a Chartered Commercial Surveyor at Network Rail. So Layla's journey shines a light on the realities of navigating the APC with neurodiversity, working in rail freight, and the importance of lone working safety. Today's conversation is an honest, practical look at parts of surveying we don't often hear about and one that really matters. And so, hello, and welcome, Layla. How are you today?
Hi, Nina. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. Not too bad. And I'm really glad that we've had the opportunity to do this conversation, because when we first had a chat and you talked about rail freight, I actually found that really interesting. I do like trains and railways. Don't want to sound a bit sad. I'm not a train spotter. But yeah, I found it really interesting. And I thought, and some of the things that we were talking about and we can talk about today, I thought a lot of people would want to hear about. So before we sort of go into some of those topics, can you tell me a little bit more about what it actually is that you do as a chartered commercial surveyor in rail freight?
Yeah, there's obviously not a pathway for rail freight on its own, but generally speaking, it's a lot like other sort of commercial, like retail, office surveying roles, but it's obviously just specialised to the railway. So largely, I deal with sort of open storage space and sidings, which is the tracks that the freight trains will use to go in and out of the yards. And load and unload their goods. So it's more industrial based. There are sort of limitations to sort of the experience that I get, but it's one of them roles that I think once you're in, you're in.
Right.
Because it's enjoyable. You still deal with a lot of the landlord and tenant, lease compliance, strategic real estate management. There's a sort of a level of property management involved as well. So it does tap into a lot of those areas of strength in commercial, but yeah, it's very specific. So that does limit you in some ways.
So it's like a niche, isn't it?
Yes,
Almost. Or a
definitely.
niche,
Yeah.
even.
And I went in knowing that as well.
What was it that appealed to you?
If I'm being honest, it was just to take the next step in my career. I was at local authority prior to that, so there was sort of limitations in where I could go, and typically with local authorities there was a restructure that was pending for quite some time. And if I'm being very, very candid, I just got a bit bored of waiting. Promotion that wasn't sort of going through at the speed that I wanted. So there was a level of probably impatience there as well. But yeah, so it was just time to take the next step. And I just started applying for different things, really. I was on my apprenticeship route still for my building surveying degree. So that obviously factored into some difficulties with applying for some roles, because the companies needed to be able to take on apprentices and have the ability to support me through that. So it's a bit of a strange time to want to move as well. But really and truly, it was just the scouring the internet for different roles and different things that I thought I'd be able to do. And this position just happened to come up. And it was in London, which was quite daunting for me because I live in Essex, in one of the seaside towns, not Southend. So so it was quite difficult to grasp the fact that I applied for a job in London, and it took a long while actually to get an interview. So I wasn't really even aware to the degree of like the rail element that I'd be dealing with until I kind of got there on my first day and got immersed into the role. It's just something and it seems to be the motto of my career, that's just something that's just happened. It's ended up being quite something I'm quite passionate about.
Yeah. Oh, that's good to hear. And with regards to the role, do you do a lot of travelling?
Yeah, it's a very large patch, just myself and another colleague, my senior. So, yeah, between us, we cover what's known as three of our routes. I won't go into detail, but essentially, it's sort of southeast London down to Dorset.
Oh, that's a big area. So what's a typical day?
I wish I had a typical day. My typical day is often interrupted by side quests.
Right.
I'll sit down and go, oh, I'm going to do this report today, and I'll type a sentence, and then my phone will ring, and someone will say, we're looking at this piece of land for one of our projects, and it's got one of your tenants on it. Do you think you could put us in contact? And then I call the tenant up and say, oh, I've got this project, and this is what they'd like to do. And just small tasks like that pop up, and you have to deal with them immediately because a lot of the projects and things are quite urgent, and they've let down with the space they were using, or something's happened that means that they need to ask one of our tenants. So yeah, that can happen. Or sometimes it will be, oh, this person's using this bit of land, and should they be? And then you have to look it up on the systems and check, and there's a lot of interference from other tasks, but it's all part of the job, and it keeps you on your toes.
But you do tend to do on your visits. What kind of things are you inspecting, for example, when you go out to a particular site?
So the biggest thing with any of our sites, whether they're tenanted or vacant, is safety, security. Is are all the gates locked? Is there any breaches in the fencing? Are there any immediate safety concerns regarding sort of like fly tipping or materials that shouldn't be by the railway? It's very largely based on health and safety compliance and security of the site. As a forefront, but obviously for tenanted sites, we're also checking for uses, making sure it's in line with the lease and general lease compliance as well. And in some cases, a lot of our tenants are very, very good tenants. So I hope they're listening. Yeah, they are. They're rail orientated tenants, which means that they are very aware of the risks of the railway, health and safety. But ever so often, it's so can you reduce the height of that aggregate that you're storing because it's too high, or can you move some of those tires because they're a fire risk? And very occasionally you still find some of the prohibited gases on site, so it's just a case of this is what it says in the lease, you're not allowed to have that there, please can you remove it?
And I think you mentioned Japanese knotweed, just had to mention it.
Yeah, that's one that we look out for regularly on the railway. Any signs of it, we obviously report it immediately and start the process of treatment. But I haven't thankfully come across Japanese knotweed, but colleagues of mine have. So that's been successfully treated. So.
So I think we'd mentioned before in our last conversation around lone working, and it was I think that would be something interesting because I think you talked about being on site quite a lot on your own, and sort of what are the safeguards and that you sort of undertake?
Yeah, I do a lot of lone working, as does my colleague. Because of the areas we sort of cover, it wouldn't be sort of feasible for both of us to travel out to everything together. So typically where I might be meeting someone on site, I would tend to take, especially like a prospective tenant, I would take someone else with me anyway, just out of precaution. There's someone new with, we're not familiar. But doing inspections, typically I'll meet tenants on site, or be going to tenanted sites. So I'll be signing in and out. But we do have lone working on our an app on our phone, so we can open that up and turn it on, which means that there's a degree of monitoring happening. I'm not entirely sure how it works, because thankfully I've never had it triggered, but from what I understand, could not be correct, but it listens to triggers. So obviously wording that could trigger off concern, or if you become non-responsive in and things like that. So I think that triggers off a concern, which is then raised and escalated. But I do site check-ins as well with my line manager and say I'm on site, I'm now doing this, and then I'll message again and say leaving site. And obviously while I'm driving I can't do anything, but then as soon as I arrive to my next location or back home, it will be I'm home safely.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good you've got the app and that process.
Yeah,
I think a lot of other organisations would benefit from that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm really surprised that it's still an area that is so underlooked. Be the correct word, I think. I mean, we in the local authority, we had I can't remember what they were called. It was like SkyGuard or something. And it was another lone working device, but I never used it or never had one because I didn't do a lot of lone working. It was always teamed up, taking out juniors to go and do inspections and things. So thankfully didn't really experience the lone working part, but certainly, yeah, where I am now, I know it's something that says that if you can prevent it, you should. But ultimately there's a feasibility of things as well, like the financial costs of taking out 2 qualified surveyors to an inspection
Yeah.
on a vacant property. Obviously, safety measure wise, I'm probably overly cautious, but if I was to ever come across anything that was concerning, I would immediately retreat and make a phone call and call out a security company to come and investigate on my behalf, because that's safer than going forth and potentially there's
Yeah.
squatting or anything in a property.
So it's like being aware.
Health and safety issue as well, because some of our buildings do have asbestos. So if you've got squatters in there and they've decided to start kicking panels in and things
Uh,
like that, if you, I think at the moment I would see anything that I'd consider as dangerous, I'd retreat, make a phone call, and get the next steps in place.
mm. There is so much loan working. It's a very common thing. And that there has been things that have happened in the past. Thankfully, not very often. Was it this Susie Lampler? I think is
Susie
the
Lampler, yeah, there's a
yeah.
Susie Lampler Trust for raising awareness of lone working because um, it, obviously for anyone that might not be aware, she was a young estate agent who went out to go and meet a client and effectively didn't return.
Mm,
And there was no
yeah, it's
mechanisms in
shocking.
place to
Yeah.
protect her from anything.
Well, hopefully with things like this and moving forwards, there'll be more and more of these kind of devices and things. And you've got really clearly got really good procedures and processes where you are, which is really good to hear. What I'd like to explore now is around the APC. So tell me about your APC journey.
Well, where do you
Yeah.
start? Probably one of the most daunting and grueling experiences of my life personally. I'm not sure if everyone would agree, but I think general consensus is it's certainly no easy feat.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, obviously, rightly so, you're becoming a chartered member of the RICS, so it's not meant to be easy. But it certainly is very difficult. I've got 2 young children, so I actually did my degree on the apprenticeship route whilst working full time with 2 children.
Wow.
I can't calculate the age they were when I started, but I think they were about 6 and 4. Very young and demanding age and sort of just starting school, and so there was all of that to contend with on the degree pathway, and then there was the APC that sort of came around during the degree itself, because you're doing a 2-year masters. You have to start your recording almost immediately
Yes.
if you plan to sit at the end of your, once you've graduated. I chose to defer because it was honestly just so overwhelming, like just almost relaxing, because you get the degree. All of a sudden it like ramps back up again. You've got to get ready for your APC. And I just absolutely wasn't. So I didn't submit for so it would have been, I graduated in 2023, so I would have been sitting around May
Mm.
2024, which means I needed to submit by January, and I graduated in the October. So it just wasn't happening for me. Certainly not with changing roles as well. I'm one of those people that apparently doesn't do things in halves. So
All right. So it's all or nothing.
yeah, very much all or nothing. I'm always looking for
Right.
the next challenge as well, which is a detriment to myself. So
Yeah, but that's
yeah,
clearly why you've achieved what you've achieved. I mean, to
yeah,
become chartered is not easy.
it's not
And
at
this
all.
is,
No.
it's not just you, so many people I speak to. It is
Yeah,
really, really challenging. And I think what I'd be interested to understand a bit more is that sort of around neurodiversity and the challenges that brings, and whether that's through the process or the support needed.
yeah. So I'm dyslexic, diagnosed first when I was at uni, actually. So kind of really quite a late diagnosis for that. And then I was also diagnosed as ASD, so autistic spectrum disorder, in 2020, so 'cause that's up through a workplace assessment. Since then, I definitely also think I've got ADHD traits as well, which isn't uncommon in autistic people. There's a term that's ADHD, which is autistic and ADHD, which is, yeah, it's quite common, but I think there's an overlap in a lot of the symptoms with autism and ADHD sometimes as well. So, but yeah, I definitely, someone else actually pointed it out to me recently when I was on a phone call. They're like, "Are you ADHD?" I was like, "No, but I definitely think I've got traits." So like, yeah, okay, I'm inclined to agree. Anyone that suspects, I would certainly say pursue a diagnosis, and not for the fact that you're getting a label, but for the fact that it gives you the opportunity to get the relevant support, certainly in the
I'm going to say, yeah,
workplace.
what are the benefits is get that support. And I would imagine a lot of it's also understanding for yourself. Like, that's why I do what I do, or that's why I may be different from others in that regard. You know, that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, I do think it starts a journey of understanding yourself. Although I don't necessarily think that everyone would need a diagnosis to sort of understand themselves. That, you know, people who
Yeah.
suspect normally start doing some reading and research and trying to understand. And self-diagnosis is just as recognised. But I think the formal process, although again can be quite tedious, and I think there's quite long waiting lists for a lot. I got fortunate with my diagnosis process. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it, just for the fact that it does give you that opportunity to seek out the relevant support in the workplace. So
Yeah.
with
What are the main things like that prove challenging?
everyone's really different, obviously, with how way it affects everyone, but definitely common issues that I experience, or issues that I experience that appear to be common amongst other people who are diagnosed, is sort of like processing. So when someone's giving you information, you need extra time to actually realize what they're saying to you. And if you don't necessarily grasp that initially, then that can then have a knock-on effect on any extra sort of steps that you might take to do the work that you might have been given, or to carry out the
Right.
instruction. So certainly for me, like, processing is definitely one of my difficulties, where I do sometimes misunderstand information or don't have enough time to consider it.
If you're not given, so if someone's literally just going blah, 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 telling you all this information, you need a bit of time to like sort of digest that,
Yeah.
process it, and then sort of remember it, and then you know what to do. So, but there's
Yeah.
there's like a delay. Is that
And it's at times clarify as well. I don't know. A good example that I think a lot of everyone experiences, no matter where they sit in life, is that sometimes someone might say something to you and you go, "Sorry, what did you say?" But then it actually registers what they've said. Then you go, and then you answer them and go, "Well, if you heard me, why did you ask me to repeat it?" And you're like, "Because I was still like, processing what you said." That's exactly what it's like on a daily basis, and probably at a more heightened level as well. So it's almost like that ability to stop someone from talking and saying, "Just sorry, pause for a second there. Can I just clarify this, and this? Okay, let's move on to the next bit." So it's just that ability to be able to stop and digest the information appropriately at your speed, to then, carry on reabsorbing and take notes, and just mechanisms that people might have in place. I typically jot down keywords and phrases, or do a little diagram of a flow chart of some sort that someone might be giving me a step by step on. So there's distractions, so noises in the office, or just
okay?
generally if you're trying to work at home or
So
do
it's that
things. And
ability to focus and stay focused. But if you're easily distracted, then it's going to break your train of thought. Like,
yeah. Yeah, and different people thrive off of different environments. So for me, I like to be in a quiet, enclosed space so I could just get on with things in a focused manner. I also prefer, emails and Teams messages over phone calls and
yeah,
conversations. And there's a level of, obviously, flexibility that you have to provide, because you do get people that come to your desk and say, "Oh, can I just have a moment?" and it's up to me then to say, yes, do you know what, can you just give me 10 minutes so I could just do what I'm doing, and then we'll find somewhere, or to say, can you please put something in my diary? I'm really busy today, I'm afraid. Or, alternatively go, oh yeah, sure, no problem. Should we go somewhere
So it's
quiet?
like the communication of it as well, sort of
Yeah,
managing
exactly.
people's expectations and
Yeah.
letting them know, isn't it? Rather than you just struggling and like getting overwhelmed with everything.
Can you just put some, and they're all mechanisms that I've had to learn. That's all around sort of the more assertiveness side of things rather than the passive. Again, like I'm very empathetic, so I very much think about how things will make other people feel based on how I would feel. So giving away chunks of myself has been a thing over the past few years whilst learning these sort of assertive techniques where you can say, no, thank you, not today. I feel like you're doing something you shouldn't. So developing techniques like that are all, really good things that happen around workplace coaching, which comes from the process of, declaring to your workplace that you are neurodiverse and you do need support, and having those assessments done. And we're having workplace coaching that supports you with
Right.
managing workplace life. So you have to go into the office. Like, you can't not go in. I'd love to not have to go in. It's the travel, it's the sensory overwhelm, getting home at the end of the day, and I'm completely exhausted and I'm overwhelmed. And again, workplace coaching is something that helps you to cope with. It's not just coping with what's happening, but it's also coping with what you are allowed to do, because I'm very much someone that needs to work within the lines, within the box. And if this happens, am I allowed to do this? Like, do I have my own freedom to make that decision to do this? Or do I need to consult with a line manager and let them know? So it's all those things that give you that ability to know what you can and can't do. So, yeah, in the workplace, quiet spaces to work,
Okay.
noise cancelling headphones. Some people opt in for loops, which are sort of just in-ear headphones that I don't know if they play music or not, but they just help to cancel out some of that sound that you get,
And
the
then
sort of
distractions
interference
as well.
sound. It's the when you I can't put things inside my ears,
Yeah.
mainly because I've got tragus piercing, but just as well because it's uncomfortable. I don't.
Oh, and yeah, and I think there's what I've seen a lot of is where and people have said to me is that within organizations, firms, etc., is, there's talk about neurodiversity. There's like a neurodiversity month or an ADHD month, and there's something, an article, but that's all very well, but it needs to be ingrained into the actual day-to-day
Yeah,
practical things. And you've
yeah.
already talked about quite a few of those, which is quite interesting to hear, and interesting when people listening maybe they could consider something like that, like the quiet space, like the understanding, I think, and you having a place to talk to someone and not feeling strange. Just, you know,
Yeah, and also like the disclosure part is I think universally a really daunting thing. And so it's having somebody that when you do disclose is not, they don't need to know everything about all different types of neurodiversity, but having the ability to say, okay, yeah, yeah, thank you so much for letting me know. What can I do to help? But
okay.
I think there's still a bit of a stigma around it, and you still sort of do get the, "Well, you don't seem, you know, X,
Those kind
Y,
of
and Z,"
comments, yeah. Oh, you don't look ADHD, or you don't,
or you
and
don't
it's like,
exactly, and it's a
yeah, those
bit,
kind of, yeah,
it can really take away from the validation of that moment where you've done something really big for yourself, and almost is the start of self-advocacy, I think, the process of disclosing to your employer, because you almost have to jump through loops to get reasonable adjustments and things in place.
how did that work with the APC?
So thankfully, I've already had like workplace coaching, and I'm due some top ups actually. And I've sort of got a number of mechanisms in place from a learning and academic side of things as well. So where I've sort of already got that, it was fairly straightforward in terms of the disclosure and the request for reasonable adjustments. Not necessarily with the writing of anything, but you do get a little bit of extra time. Sometimes they can extend your submission window to support with submitting, although I don't know if that was sort of again, this is all on an individual basis, but I believe that I was entitled to a slight extension on the submission window to support with getting something in that's obviously to a good standard to be accepted.
Okay. Yeah.
Largely, the RICS were extremely supportive and helpful through the process, and there was sort of little that the assessment team could do because it was sitting with another team. But they were extremely supportive and very helpful.
Right.
And there were moments where I did kick off a little bit just because it's unknown and the anxiety of waiting for dates and things, but they were support me.
That's good. That's really good to hear. Is it with regards to that? So to get that sort of extension of time and things like that, do they require from you that you've been formally diagnosed? Is that a requirement? Do you know?
I'm not entirely sure,
Okay.
as I said, but I do have a formal diagnosis, so it's a little harder for me to speak on that. But I did have to submit to. There's an email that you get to submit for adjustments. So you can find it very easily on the RICS website. I do think it's something along adjustments at rics.org.uk. So it's very easy to navigate. So you just submit to them a request for reasonable adjustments for.
I think it's interesting that and it's good, but what this sounds like though is the importance of the self-awareness, self-diagnosis, and potentially get it formally diagnosed. Depends on everyone's individual sort of circumstance and situations, but and then sort of understanding that there is that support there before you embark on that APC journey, and to talk with your line managers, or make sure that to be able to sort of speak up about it in the first place, because the more people know about it, then they'll be able to provide the support.
So for me, in my current role, earlier in the year, like I'd obviously done my APC at that point around January, February time. And I just had a whirlwind of a year. Like I think everything just caught up with me. So it was like I'd done I'd done the degree, I'd done the APC, I'd done all these other personal milestones as well in my own life, as well as my career. And it's almost like all of a sudden it just hit me all at once. And I was like, whoa, like I can't even concentrate on what I'm doing. And so I had to have that sit down with at this point it was the head of the department, the team that I work in. And I was like, I'm actually having a bit of a difficult time right now. And actually saying, like, these things are things I've done, but actually because of my neurodiversity, it's impacting me a lot harder. And having to have those conversations, because it's not just, all right, they've disclosed, we've got mechanisms in place to help support them in the workplace or through their OPC or through their academia. It's also then sometimes 6 months, 18 months down the line going, actually, I'm having quite a hard time at the moment. I'm feeling very overwhelmed. But these are the
Right.
things that I've been doing, and the fact that because of my neurodiversity, this is now impacting me that little bit more, because I think people think that once it's in place, and that's it. You're never going to experience any problems again. Um, it's not the
Yeah,
case.
stop.
As someone, a neurotypical person experiencing things of overwhelm and difficulty, they will need mechanisms put in place to help support them in the workplace. But so
What I will say, Layla, I think, from what you've told me, I think you've done amazingly well. Literally, despite all those challenges, to do your APC with 2 young children, I think has to be applauded, because that is not easy. I mean, when you look back now, how do you feel? You must feel proud of what you've achieved.
yeah, I do. I'm one of those people, and I did a LinkedIn post on it recently, actually, that struggles to stop and appreciate the moment. I'm always looking. Like, I'm not where I want to be by any means.
Okay.
I'm closer than I was 4 years ago, but by no means I'm not at the top of where I aim to reach to. Even after the APC, I was like, right, what courses can I do now? I've just got off of looking
Yeah.
at like an LLM mediation and arbitration degree or masters with the University of Law. It's just I don't know. Maybe I just don't know when to stop and sit
It's
down
a
and
thirst for
say,
knowledge. Is it a thirst? Do you love to learn?
I
Do you love
do.
to,
It's tough,
yeah.
especially doing like masters and degrees and stuff. But I do. I'm a bit of a academic addict. Um, but I've come to the conclusion that I think I probably need to learn more about, what I do commercially and develop in those. I would still like to do.
What do you enjoy about what you do?
Do you know what? I think for me, it's a career that suits my personality type. We're all a bit quirky. We're all a bit, but I just, as I say, like, I think the motto for my career is that it just happened. My first role in the property sector happened just off the back of doing a psychology degree. So I was like, I want to be a psychologist. And I had wanted to do that for a long time. So I eventually did go down the route of doing that degree. Um, and it got to the end of the degree, and I was like, is it really going to take me another 4 years to become like a qualified psychologist in a certain field? And it was like, I need to look for a job. And my husband was at home with the children, whilst I did my degree, because that was full time on campus. So we it was really hard for him to find something that worked around me. And he said, you know what, just go and get your degree. I've got mine. You go and get yours, and we'll make everything work.
Oh.
So yeah, that was a long process, and at the end of it we both went, right, we need to look for a job, and we both just sort of started looking, and it just so happened that I got an interview with the local authority as an assets assistant, and it was like, oh yeah, would you be willing to undertake a qualification? I'm like, is that a trick question? Obviously I would be. But they obviously didn't know me at that time, because after they employed me I was like, so when am I going to start this qualification? I hadn't even finished my undergraduate degree yet. And I was like, when am I going to start the next one? But yeah, so that's obviously how it came around that I did the building surveying masters. But I just always enjoyed, I think I'm a process person. I like to decipher problems and puzzles, and in
Do you like the technical
yeah,
aspects?
absolutely.
Yeah, I think that goes hand in hand, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely like sort of looking
Like
through
the
something,
geeky.
and
I have a lot of surveys that say they're geeky, like they obsess about one particular thing, a type of cement, or it could be.
been really privileged to have access to like very, very old historic leases, like working for the local
Oh,
of the physical copies that literally, like, you open it up and dust drops out. Like, you have to blow it to read it. It honestly, I've and that's where I think the love of it comes from. And like, when you're doing your degree in surveying and you're talking about properties and things, the first thing anyone says is read the lease. And anyone that talks to me now, I'm that person that says read the lease, because that's getting all of the information you need to know about what's going on. So yeah, coming across like problems as well around like what to do in certain situations without obviously going into detail that could affect GDPR. Like, you've got a tenant that's occupying a property that they shouldn't be, and how on earth do you get them out, and what do you do, and or how do you regularize it? And so it's all of those like sort of problem solving things where you have to do a bit of research. I think I'm certainly more, I'd say, leaning towards a specialty of like lease compliance and landlord and tenant matters. So you have
yeah.
that law that's written in the lease, the clauses, the compliance and everything. And when someone comes to me and says, oh, are they responsible for this? Do they have to do this, or who maintains what? It's an immediate puzzle to unpack, especially on the railway, because you've got a lot of our leases which have like excluded equipment, which is retained by the railway itself, and maintained by them as well. And then you've got the area that they lease, and then this random building that's like a shunters that's on their land, and we're responsible.
What's a shunter?
Actually, in railways, a shunter is either a small, powerful locomotive used for moving and assembling trains in a yard, and or a person who performs the related tasks of coupling and uncoupling wagons.
Now
Nothing to do
have
with the
an
track, it's to do
actual
with the
definition.
wagons.
But so I think, I mean, we've covered quite a lot today. So we've covered sort of the challenges around neurodiversity and the support that you can get, and the importance of self-advocacy, I think, and how you've had to go through the challenging process for anyone is the APC. It is extremely difficult, and how you're still looking for other things to do despite working very hard and having very long days. And also, you know, the Susie Lampler Trust, I think that's an important one, and the app about loan working. I think it's something that I think a lot of companies should look into using. I think it's great that you have that at Network Rail. And I've really enjoyed learning about freight as well. Yeah. But thank you very much for your time today, Layla. Is there anything else you want to add before we sign off?
No, I think anyone who might be, to offer support really for anyone who might be going through a process of potentially recognising that they're neurodiverse. My LinkedIn is probably going to be attached to this, or can be. Might want to discuss that process in confidence of just, you know, going through the motions of getting support in the workplace. I'm more than happy for people to reach out to me. And
that's great.
I'm also, I've just registered and done the training to be a RICS counsellor. For people going through the
really?
APC. So
excellent.
Specialising, I think, in, I'll help anyone, but certainly anyone who's got a family and is trying to go through the process or is neurodiverse and wants some support with that, I'm more than happy to.
That's great.
do so.
That's great. I don't know how you fit it all in a day. It's like, you know, next time I speak to you, you'll probably write like 300 letters after your names with all these degrees and PhDs. Like,
honestly, that would be great. I want to collect letters. So.
Yeah, but thank you, Layla. I've really enjoyed our conversation today. And yeah, for everybody, what I'll do is I'll include your LinkedIn profile and any other bits of information. The Susie Lampler Trust, I'll include that in. But thank you. Thank you for today.
Oh, no, thank you very much for having me.